Yeah, I'd be glad to. We're excited to have everybody here today for another year of exciting virtual events, and we thank our panelists for being here. You'll hear a little bit more about them later, but the title is Help and Support for At-Promise Learners, Academic and Emotional Well-Being, moving through the 2022 UNESCO report to inform inclusive practices in our community. So the agenda you can see on the screen. I've welcomed you. And Rebecca's going to talk about Blackfoot, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Then we'll have our panelists, then our breakout group discussions, and then we're going to share out together and then talk about what's next in diocese. On this slide, you see a little bit about our division and our mission statement. I don't think I'll read the whole thing, but I do want to read the mission statement. The Division of International Special Education and Services, the Division of the Council for Exceptional Children, promotes knowledge exchange, collaboration, human rights, and advocacy to provide to those who provide services for individuals with disabilities. And that's a pretty important mission, and we're proud to try to fulfill that.
Thank you. So as Alice mentioned, we had seen the UNESCO report, and we, after reading it, the planning committee thought, one of the important things that we could do, because this report just came out, was really look at how this was impacting learners, teachers, families, and school leadership. And so we wanted to look at this through the lens of the global pandemic, but the impact that it's had on social, emotional, and academic experiences around the globe. So as we thought about the panel that we wanted to bring together, we wanted to have representation from the different areas of the globe who could give us some insight and also some resources to share with our friends from around the globe. And one of the things that we talked about at first when we were thinking about the social emotional learning is the importance of kind of centering it. And so in our discussion, we brought up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which in the US, I can at least speak for, this is a very common framework to look at when we think about the development and growth of learners. The idea being that at the base level, that we need our physiological needs met, and then we need our safety needs met. Then we can start working on belongingness and love, esteem, the need to understand, aesthetic needs, self-actualization, and then we get to transcendence. What I found interesting a few years ago was I found out that Maslow, who is very well known here in the US and in every psychology class and in a lot of education classes, actually lived with the Blackfoot Tribe for quite some time. And there's some evidence that he may have taken their level or their hierarchy of needs to develop his own. And so we wanted to mention the First Nations perspective. And you'll see that you actually are born with self-actualization, your basic need. You come into this world with all you need. And then as you grow, you see where you fit within your community actualization, and then you get to your cultural perpetuity, which is really the, when you hit that level, that is really when you hit the highest level of kind of development. And so we wanted to kind of settle and create this space on the understanding that, this is about all of our learners and ourselves as educators really getting to that like most high level. And so our job is to work together to think about that. One of the terms we also in our planning meetings discussed was the use of the term at promise. A lot of times, especially in the special education world, we often have been found to use very deficit-based language. And so the idea of at promise is kind of reframing the work that we do into an assets-based language. It also addresses the challenges that we have with the global vocabulary. I remember a few years ago in Dices, we were talking about, well, what do we want to change our language? And somebody had mentioned, well, why don't we use vulnerable populations? And then somebody mentioned the etymology of the word vulnerable, and that it actually, it comes from a wound. And so we've been in these talks over the years, and so one of the things we want to kind of bring to this discussion table, not that Dices has made a decision, but bring to the table is really thinking about how we talk about the children we are serving and the families we're serving. And so this is really, at promise, shows a commitment to unlearning these oppressive practices and to striving for a better world, which is, I think, why we are all here, at least for me and Mario. I know we're here at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and I'm sure there's many people in different time zones who have joined us today. So I'm going to introduce very briefly our panelists. And so we have Dr. Radpat, and she is a professor in the School of Education and a director of the Masters of Arts in Education Studies and Special Education. She and I know each other actually from South Africa. We both were at University of Johannesburg together while I was doing my Fulbright, and she is now in British Columbia. And she comes with a wealth of experience and is just an amazing educator. We also have Mrs. Joan Phillips Bennett, and I'm sorry that I didn't get the last part of your name on this slide. And she has been an educator for more than 10 years with a background in visual and performing arts, as you can see by the background in her screen right now, a very creative woman. And she advocates for persons with exceptionalities and has been working closely with educators, parents, and various ministers in Jamaica to help make the school system a better place. We also have Mr. Alarbi Ahmad, and he is the president and executive director of the Moroccan Center for Civic Education. And he also graduated from in applied linguistics from the University of Reading in the UK, holds a master's degree in education from Cardiff University and a university doctorate honors from Ottawa University in Canada. I am very excited to hear about the work that he and our next guest, Ms. Tanya Pinkerton, have done together. And she serves as a project manager for the USAID funded cooperative agreement, the Higher Education Partnership with Morocco, and is a clinical assistant professor in the Division of Teacher Preparation for the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College at Arizona State University, and she has a lot of wonderful things to tell us as well. So I am going to stop sharing my screen, but we have a few questions for our panelists, and we are going to start with the first question, which we're going to have you introduce yourself a little bit more and talk about positive strategies that you use in your country to support learners, at promise learners. And so we'll start with Miss Joan Phillips Bennett.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, depending on your time zone. I am Joan Phillips Bennett. As you heard, I am from Jamaica, currently living in Jamaica. And I am a graduate of the Meinck University College with a master's in special education. I also have a master's in international management and marketing from the California Intercontinental University. And my background primarily is in the arts. So I am a music graduate, film, I have experience in these areas. The positive strategies in our country, mostly it's through the use of our IEPs. And in Jamaica now, we call it IIPs, the individualized intervention plans. And it's through continued assessment in which we help students who are differently abled or persons with exceptional needs. And with the new term, if we're going to use it, at-promise learners, right? And the government, through the special education unit, they developed a curriculum for persons who may be who may need more life skills. So the curriculum for moderate to profound disabilities is the name of the document that teachers use as a guide for children who may need more intervention than others. So through this intervention, our students benefit from hands-on training and one-on-one interaction with their educators. In our country, we have a few schools, not many, based on the resources that we have, but we do have a few schools that have special education units, special education classrooms, and some schools have been practicing inclusion, but mostly there has been separation where you have your pull-out students who go to different sessions and then come back to engage with their learners or peers who may not have any other exceptional needs as they may have.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Pinkerton, could you share a little bit about your work?
Sure. So I'm Tanya Pinkerton at Arizona State, and I do work in teacher prep, both at Arizona State and also in the work that we're doing internationally. So I come to this conversation with that teacher preparation lens for sure. And I'm very proud to say that I get to do work in Morocco. It's a beautiful country with wonderful people. We've had a really good experience, our whole team, working with the Moroccan faculty. And they are doing some really exceptional and progressive work there in the area of teacher preparation, and particularly in inclusive education. So our current project is looking at reconceptualizing how teachers are prepared. Historically in Morocco, teachers had been prepared at regional training centers. So coming to those training centers with university degrees in a variety of contents, so physics degrees, for instance. And a few years ago, they actually changed that. Now, the people entering the regional training centers will come with a bachelor's of education, which is a really exciting change, with an emphasis on inclusive education for at-promise learners across a variety of contexts. I know we're certainly focused here on the disability context, but we also look at the very complex language system in Morocco. So there are dialects that are mostly spoken at home. We also use modern standard Arabic, French, and English in the schools, which of course brings its own set of excitement and also constraints. And then when we think about at-promise learners in Morocco, I also, of course, think of students in rural areas, especially given all of the remote learning that has gone on in the last few years. So just one other quick thing is that Morocco did come out in 2021 with the new development model, which is a very progressive model looking at across sectors, but in the education sector, really, how do we develop human capital in a way that promotes inclusion, not only in schools, but across sectors. And I'm sure my colleague Alarbi will talk about civic engagement as well. So thank you.
All right, why don't we have Mr. Ahmad, would you please share a little bit with us, seeing that we've heard the US half of that, and we'd love to hear the Moroccan.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for your invitation. And I'm proud to be one of you today. And the first thing I learned when you contacted me is the positive term, which is the at-promise learners. So thank you for the positive connotation. So we here in Morocco, we talk about inclusive education, people with disabilities, special need, where people with special needs, special education, and other people are using other terms. So before I get started, so my name is Al-Arabi Imad, and my background is education, and by profession I am a teacher trainer, and also I've been doing a lot of project management and working, and very proud to be working on this promising project with my colleague and friend Tanya. Let me start with one of the challenges, which is the pandemic. The pandemic, as you know, has spotlighted critical gaps in the country's capacities, not only in Morocco, but across the globe, to address not only the equitably and effectively the learning, but also, the well-being needs of students, especially in the early years to year 12, and in particular, the at-promise learners. So the pandemic has been a barrier to present a number of at-promise students from successfully either pathwaying to further education or employment. In terms of our strategies, I am very pleased to inform you, and as Tanya has already mentioned, that Morocco is embarking now on a very ambitious program and project on inclusive education in collaboration with a number of development agencies like USAID, like UNICEF, and others. And these promising strategies has its roots in what we call here in Morocco the Higher Council for Education and Training, which is like a very big institution that draws roadmaps for the education, training, and scientific research in Morocco. So it has released the Morocco reform called Strategic Vision 2015-2030, and this strategic vision has focused on equity and equal opportunities. It also tries to help eradicate various types of disparities and a necessary component in developing inclusive education in a very cohesive society. And also one of its aspects is to ensure the right to education and training for people with disabilities and for people in very specific situation, either in rural areas or urban areas. And one of among the strategies, because of the time, I would like to mention some very positive one. Tanya has talked about teacher prep. At the same time, now we are preparing the curriculum framework for the inclusive education in collaboration with UNICEF. We are working also on a reference for competencies in the curriculum framework, in addition to integrating the civic education and the civic engagement. The Ministry of Education is also developing with the stakeholders a kind of software to improve reading for deaf children at an early age, and also producing teaching aids and tools in sign language. And in this way, we are working together in terms of creating a national frame of references for the school and also for the vocational guidance system. And the ultimate goal, of course, is to encourage and motivate not only the public schools, but also the private schools in collaboration with the NGOs and civil society institutions to follow and facilitate all kinds of arrangements to implement inclusive education in a very appropriate way. Thank you.
Fantastic. And Dr. Rekpat, will you please?
I guess it was me because I'm the one that's left. Good morning, everyone. So I first of all just want to respectfully acknowledge that I work, learn and play on the traditional, ancestral and unceded territory of the Kwantlen First Nation, the Katsi First Nation and the Stolo First Nations in the lower mainland of British Columbia, Canada. However, the work that I will be talking to you about today is from my former role as an educator and faculty at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. And I was also an educational psychologist in practice there. So it's in combination with these two that I'll be sharing with you. And when I spoke to Rebecca, there was so much that I could share, but I decided to zone in on one aspect of a resource that we created for teachers in South Africa. Now, if you might not be, but if you're familiar with the South African context, educational resources are quite scarce for teachers in South Africa, especially for those teachers in more rural areas, and also teachers who went through their pre-service teacher education during a former segregated, discriminatory apartheid system. So we received some funding from USAID, from the European Union, from Alma Philanthropies, quite a few places that said to us, we would like to for you to create resources to support teachers, to support young children in South Africa. And those are children at promise learners, but also in general. And what we decided to do was create a web page where we have accessible knowledge for teachers. And where my role came in was on the website. There were lessons, examples of lessons, examples of resources, etc. But specifically my work came in joining the world of art and the world of knowledge, and we created short documentary films on varying aspects of child development in the new tradition of transformation of science. Now I can go on about transformation of science, which I will not bore you with too much, but the basic idea is that in the world of the academy, we actually have this, we need to look at different ways of making our knowledge that we create and our research accessible for the general public and for public consumption beyond just sharing in peer-reviewed academic journals. And a lot of it's now sprouted this genesis of digital information via multimedia context. And this is where our films come in. Now, you might argue, okay, there's a lot of films on child development, etc. on YouTube, but we wanted to make specifically films for the South African context and for the South African teachers. In making these films, our main focus was on the information had to be based on current research and knowledge. It had to be short, sharp, and focused. We didn't want to bore anyone. It had to be entertaining and, of course, contextually relevant. So we created a series of films that focus on child development and learning, except for the thesis writing series. And you'll see in the resources that I shared all of them, which was funded specifically for academic supervisors and grad students. Each film was scripted in the genre of performative instructional documentary. It was based on new research from various colleagues and my own. And scripts were developed over months of various iterations. The actors in the film were the researchers in various projects, but also undergrad students, teachers, grad students, intern psychologists, research assistants, and we really wanted to get everybody in the community involved, and specifically teachers in the field. And we were fortunate enough that we had a lab school. They have a lab school on campus called the Funda Ojabule, which means Learn and Be Joyful Lab School. And we use teachers and children from this specific school in the videos. So if you would look at the videos, it's about an aspect of child development, but at the end, it would contain information specifically for teachers and for use in the South African context. But some of it will also be universally applicable. Like, for instance, the film on screen time and the dangers of screen time is something that's universal, but also contextually. And then each of the films were shared, like I shared them on YouTube with you for easy access, but there is this Knowledge for Action webpage where local teachers can sign on to get access to all of these resources. So that's in a nutshell what I wanted to share with you.
And it is a fantastic resource. And by the way, at the end of the panel, just in case you're saying, where is this resource? I will be sharing the link to that. So thank you so much. So now we want to move into what strategies you'd like to explore further in your country. Mr. Ahmad, would you like to start us off on this one? You're muted right now, sorry.
Thank you. One of the things that I personally would like to explore further is maybe to increase access to early child education and also for at the promise learners, because what we really need is the adequate and appropriate teacher training sessions and workshops. The other thing is I would like to explore the design and also to provide this category of people a multi-path ways in learning that would enable them either to pursue integrated academic and vocational curriculum, and also the assessment process that will equip them with the knowledge, the skills, the mindsets, and also the capabilities for further education. 3, how about integrating, as I said earlier, the social emotional skills? This is really, really important because most of the time, we as educators, we think a lot about maths, physics, reading, but we sometimes forget about the civic education, the universal values, the promotion of democracy, of human rights. And these concepts are so important for the at promise learners. Then I would like to explore the fact of providing adequate resources in terms of learning and improving the digital literacy, in addition to other resources like textbooks and hands-on material. So that said, I am seeing it like this. If we could think of some kind of standards, including equipping the teachers or the teacher trainees and trainers with the professional knowledge, with the professional skills in terms of planning, managing, and assessment of the courses, and also the professional engagement. And I would like to underscore the professional engagement because we really need to involve other stakeholders, like the parents. In Morocco, we have the parents associations engagement, like the NGOs, like the mass media, meaning that I would like to explore the establishment of a regular and create professional learning communities. And the goal is to address inclusive education and share those best practices. And also we need to think of the curriculum, as I said, the skills and the assessment framework, in addition to, of course, the contributions of international agencies such as USAID, UNICEF, and other agencies that work closely with the Ministry of Education.
Oh, that is fantastic. And I saw Joan also put yes in the chat if you missed that. Miss Phillips-Bennett, would you share with us, because you actually talked about how you are developing a lot of the curriculum and hands-on pieces for your students. And actually, I know that it's very exciting because Jamaica just got their law passed this year after it being in 2014, it was proposed and it just got passed this year. So I know there's a lot of exciting things going on there. Could you share maybe what you would like to explore further in your country?
Wonderful. Thank you for mentioning that. That was actually where I was going to start. Our Disabilities Act, which was from 2014, as you said. We are happy to know that we are a step ahead. We have a lot more to do, of course. But as Dr. Imad, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Yes. Yes, I am totally in agreement. For our country, for Jamaica, I would love to see more multi-tiered learning strategies being implemented. It promotes more inclusive learning, inclusive environment, because not only in the classroom, we need to look beyond the classroom as well, because it changes the culture of your nation. So when you look at all the stakeholders, we need more support systems put in place for even our parents. We have a lot of parents in our country, and I can only speak from my country, of course, but we have a lot of parents who they have children who have exceptional needs, but they have no clue what to do. They have nowhere to turn, and they're not sure how to really cater to them. And not that, of course, they can't search on the net or just do their own research, but there's a different support that you get when you have someone actually guiding you through the process, similar to when you have an IEP for your student or your child. So to have this and to promote a universal design for learning is really ideal for pushing the nation further to have a more inclusive society. I would love to see more assessment centers. We have a very good assessment center. It's MycoCare. And I think it was shared. It's in the resource list as well, which will be shared later on. But we do need more. We need more assessors, because our waiting list for students and children being assessed are very long. There's a long wait period, which means by the time they get assessed, some of them, they would have already passed, a few years, and they would not have received the intervention that they would have needed early, because early intervention is key. The use of technology, assistive technology for some of our students. We need more therapists. So really keying in on some of the needs that are even increasing in our society today. There are many nonverbal students in our schools, and we do need more speech therapists. We need more persons who understand how to tackle these areas, and to better equip our teachers with, teaching a student who is nonverbal, for example, because all communication is not sign language, right? And I'm sure many of the educators online understand all communication is not just sign language. There are other means of communicating. So once we key in on some of these resources, that will really be great, and more education for even our teachers and parents. So I think I'm kind of in the same line as Dr. Imad, but this is from our area. And as we speak on, if I may just add one extra bit, for COVID, when COVID stepped in and changed everything, the lack of connectivity for most of our students, and the closing of schools for such a long period of time, especially students who may need physical therapy and other, hands-on assistance, it was really detrimental, because even today they have, even for other children who we may consider to be typical, but children have been pushed back because of this gap in their learning and teaching environment. So COVID has really changed everything. So more needs to be done in terms of finding ways to modify the lessons to incorporate technology. So I've also added a resource kit that I found useful even in my classrooms in the resource list as well. So that's my bit.
Thank you so much. Laura, would you want to share a little bit about what you'd like to see?
Yes, thank you. I'm so happy you asked me because I want to follow segue. Joan gave me a nice segue because it is so strange. I came from what's seen as a third world country, if one wants to use those terms, to a first world country in Canada. And I thought I will see a totally different education system. And it seems that the difficulties that everyone's explained or discussed here are universal. Same thing, not enough assessments, not enough opportunities for assessments. Students have to wait quite a long time to be assessed. And by the time they have designation, a lot of difficulties have set in for these learners, which could have been addressed earlier on. And I've seen this in both the contexts that I've worked in, back in South Africa and here. So this seems to be a universal call for this. However, the training of psychologists that do these type of assessments and therapists, it's very intensive because I've been involved in that. Very selective, very intensive, very expensive. So what is the answer? The answer lies in bringing in, which is also something that is not new, more coursework into undergraduate or pre-service teacher training to address this, that teachers are more equipped in the classroom when they enter the classroom to work with our promised learners. And I think this is the only place that we really have in teacher education where I work in, have the ability to make an impact. And I'm very happy to say that in both the contexts that I've worked in, both in the University of Johannesburg, where we had 4 courses focused specifically on childhood development and working on children with exceptionalities or at promise learners. And at my current university, we have 3 courses in the undergraduate program that focuses specifically on special education. And we see teachers even then say they're not equipped well enough, but they are more so than maybe elsewhere in the promise where they do not have so much intensive focus on that. So I do think the onus is on us in teacher education. That's where we can really make the difference, because asking for more assessments, it's going to be like the Titanic. It's going to be a long time for that ship to turn. And this is the place I think where we can make a difference, certainly in my job where I am. So, but yes, same universal problems I see. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Tanya, did you want to share any?
Yes, and actually, I really appreciate everything that's been said so far. And Laura, I would echo what you say. Working here in the US and working in Morocco, we see so many of the same challenges. It was really interesting to experience that difference from what I expected, that there were so many overlaps. And also hearing about the delay in services provided to our At Promise learners really brings me to one thing that I would love to see in Morocco that is sort of starting to take off, and that's the implementation of universal design for learning strategies. So it is a significant focus on our higher education partnership Morocco cooperative agreement right now. And we have done quite a bit in training higher education faculty, particularly in teacher preparation spaces, but really we don't limit it. In using universal design for learning, we did a 8-part series shortly after school shutdowns on using UDL in assessment. And all of those webinars are recorded and will be in the resource list that comes out at the end. And recently, just in February, we trained 300 higher education teacher prep faculty on implementing UDL in their classrooms as a model for primary students. And I have been so pleased to say that we've received really positive feedback of faculty wanting to incorporate those strategies in order to meet the diversity of learners, not just students with disabilities, but they certainly see a wide variety of language skills, of experiences. So I'm hopeful and optimistic that will continue to be the trend in Morocco. A couple of other things I would love to see is the deployment of a network of distributed expertise. And this goes back to, I think both Joan and Alarbi made the point around multiple stakeholders, parents, NGOs, other people working maybe congruent to the education sector, but how can we find ways for educators and other stakeholders to be able to share their expertise, build these communities of practice that are authentic and sustainable. We're very fortunate in our project. We've been able to build some bridges, mostly within the education sector, but that is definitely a hope for the future, that those networks would continue to grow and that people can kind of break out of that being the teacher in my classroom with the door closed to really drawing on this amazing expertise we see across so many different people. I'd love to see more residency programs, studio teaching, teams being deployed, teams of student teachers. So those are my hopes. And we've definitely seen some of those glimmers getting out there in the field. So I feel very optimistic.
Thank you all so much. So we just have time just for anything else that you'd like to mention that maybe came up as you were listening, or maybe you want to highlight something that someone else said. And also if you would like to, if you haven't shared yet about your resource, then please do so. Laura.
I just wanted to mention also the importance of taking into consideration Indigenous knowledge systems. And if we look at EDID and the D and ended, not EDI anymore, decolonization. And that is something that we are taking really seriously in my current school at Trinity Western University in Canada. Working on with elders in the community, working with, we have one school district adjacent to the university that has 190 different home languages. Children come from 190 different home languages into the schooling system, and acknowledging the difficulties that come with that, but also acknowledging the positives of varying cultures coming together, and also asking how Indigenous communities see exceptionalities or at promise in learners, and how we can learn from that and not always have this Western perspective of this is how we see difficulties or at promise or whatever, but asking them what we can learn from them. And we are really, really focused on that. And that is for our next year. It's imperative we want to work on this. So I just wanted to highlight that as well.
I want to say thank you for that. And I also want to say thank you for giving the land acknowledgement at the beginning. That was a really powerful way to start, and really you are practicing exactly what you're saying. So thank you so much for that. Joan, would you like to share?
Just a short bit. As James in the chat had mentioned about the arts, and that is my passion too. I am reminded that even during COVID, with that long wait and being isolated for a good amount of time, we also have to look at mental state, the mental health of our students or children, because I teach students who are in correctional facilities, juvenile correctional facilities here in Jamaica. And the mental health, because they weren't able to see their families, and even a child who has special needs, there is a higher percentage of them having a meltdown, and not being able to cope with that change in routine and that change of what they are used to experiencing, even going to school on an everyday basis. So that should be something that should be implemented even in our educational space, where we cater to the emotional needs of our children, the emotional needs of our students. And the art is a very good way, through therapy, art therapy, music, all of these different visual and performing arts are very good ways in getting them to express themselves and to help in that, in breaking down the mental barriers that may be built up through COVID and isolation. Yeah. So I wanted to share that. I also put in the resource list my Facebook page that I created as a result of COVID for support for parents and teachers, different strategies that they can use, and having therapists and different persons from different fields to share with them and to help them during that time.
I love that. Yeah, it's the healing practices. We all have gone through things, and now that you've got these healing practices, that's beautiful. Alarbi, would you like to share too?
Yes, thank you. I just would like to highlight the importance of dealing with inclusive education in terms of the educational level, also in terms of the governance level, as well as the inclusive education classes. And this cannot be done unless we as educators try to create a critical mass in order to enlist our authorities, local authorities, national authorities, policy makers, and so that they would be able to provide quality education and this quality education for all. The other thing I would like to highlight is the importance of the pre-service training, in-service training, and also professional development. Why is that? Because we are dealing with at-promise learners. So that's why we need it to be a collaborative projects through formal education and also through non-formal education, which means as trainers, as teacher educators or trainers, we are badly in need to renovate and also to equip ourselves with necessary tools and with special tools as how to deal with the at-promise learners. And my last item, we should not forget about other categories of people that sometimes, that suffer within a special or some countries. We need to take care of the minorities and also the migrants, because some of these categories do not even speak the same language as we do. In the case of Morocco, there are a lot of people coming through Morocco from Africa and other countries, so we need to take care of them. Of course, out of school youths and at-risk youths. So this needs adequate and appropriate teacher training. Thank you.
I love that you brought that up. And I know Lara in South Africa, they have 11 official languages there, but that's just the official languages. The multilingual learners is such an asset that we often forget about, and we try to kind of put them into a box. So that's such an important point. Thank you for bringing up the differing abilities and strengths that our learners bring. Tanya, would you like to say any last thoughts?
No, just thank you for the discussion. I'm very excited for the breakout rooms to hear what everyone else has to add to the conversation.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen just for a moment, just to let you know about our next steps. So I also have put into the chat a link to that resources that our panelist was talking about. And you can see that each one of them was so kind in providing the different resources that they spoke about and others that they thought might be helpful for you all to have and moving the conversation forward. So now I've moved you into different groups and with the different panelists that we have this, and we have a facilitator in there that will be taking notes. And the question we have, the prompt we put out there is, how are your at-promise learners supported with social, emotional, and academics? You do not have to follow this prompt. We really just wanted to create a space for the community, our community, international community, to really come together and learn from each other. And so we're really excited for this opportunity. I'm going to be jumping around rooms, and I will, I think we're going to come back about 9:10, but it'll all depend on kind of where the discussions are. So I'm going to open up rooms, and I will see you in those. Thank you so much to our panelists. You are all just amazing people, and we are lucky to have time with you today. Hi, Debbie. Are you able to see where you go into the room? And Josie? If you're on your phone, it's at the very bottom. It'll say you've been invited to this breakout room. Are you able to see it? Are you on your phone?
I'm on my computer.
Okay, so if you go down into the bottom, like right underneath our pictures, along the bottom, you'll see something that says more, I think. And then in there, it'll say breakout rooms. Do you see anything that looks like that?
Yeah.
Being recorded.
I think in Canada, what we have is we have grand curricular outcomes, or like the main curricular outcomes that span across, it's called cross curricular outcomes, that span across the different grades. So it's not specific to a grade. And one of those cross curricular outcomes is focused on how can we develop, there are 3 of them, and the one is focused on how can we develop the individual to become socially, emotionally more resilient, interact with others. So teachers are consistently working on relationships and social emotional development throughout the grades. Once again, the pandemic has really brought out things that we had not seen before. Or maybe that were there, but it highlighted it. Exponentially, things became more focused, like childhood anxiety. I think we have an explosion of childhood anxiety currently, and teachers are anxious as well, and teachers are just coping. So it's not as if one group of people are coping and they're helping others. Everyone is just surviving. And I, for instance, I don't want to use all the time. I want other people to also speak, but I spoke to one of my grad students last week and said, now all of a sudden we're out of a pandemic and we're just supposed to be switching, and it's so difficult for little ones to know when they should be doing what, because they're just in one routine and now we're switching them, and all of a sudden we're out on the sports field, everything should be normal, and it creates so much anxiety in children. So I really feel that this is one area that needs more work, is supporting children's social emotional development, even though it is one of our cross-curricular outcomes. I think, but again, it comes back to teacher education. Teachers need support before they can give children support.
Thank you.
We're going to do just a little photo, if you don't mind, of the breakout groups. So if you wouldn't mind smiling, if you're okay being in the picture. All right, thank you. And I agree, it's the what you were saying, Laura, it's like we need to put our masks on ourselves first. We need to use the airplane, before we try to help others. And I think sometimes we forget that very important piece. So I'm going to jump to the other rooms as well, but thank you for letting me listen in for a moment.
Thanks.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, thank you, Peggy, for putting on the table the early child education, because, I personally consider it's of paramount stage of schooling and of the educational system as a whole, not only in terms, as I said earlier, of reading and maths and social studies, but also in terms of integrating the social emotional skills, in terms of educating those very younger generations as how to be trained in terms of communicating, and mainly on intercultural dialogue, interfaith dialogue, universal values, civic engagement, coexistence, tolerance, and all these human rights concepts. With the pandemic, it has been a marvelous opportunity for us all educators. And it seems to me that now it's timely to integrate such universal values from an early child education. In my situation, and in my context in Morocco, most of the parents now are no longer those parents who did not care about education. Now, parents now have created, some kind of associations in every single school in Morocco, across all the urban and the rural areas. Now they are creating some kind of, critical mass. So we need to listen to them. But those parents, they are not specialists in education, but they are eager for quality education. They are eager for the civic engagement. They would like their kids to flourish. So that's why, and also there are a lot of parents, in Morocco, it's one family out of 4, if my memory is good, who has a child, who needs inclusive education. They have a child with a special need. So, and let me tell you one thing, in Morocco, most of the families now, they started opting for the private school, and they pay large amount out of their annual salaries, which means the importance of education is there. The other thing, and I have not had the chance to raise it with my colleagues during the plenary session, is that parents now have become more aware of, that dialogue between the government and the citizen. So they started thinking this way. We are as you do in the state, we are taxpayers. So which means we deserve quality education. So parents are no longer satisfied as they used to be. And they are starving and they are hungry for quality education and for inclusive education as well.
And one of the things that I mentioned, and just in the chat in the plenary session, is that I think we still really need to focus a lot on the arts. Art, music, dance, creative dramatics. I think those are great tools for students. And, we think about the impact of Reggio Emilia, where families were so involved in the development of education for young children. And then even some of the research from the schools in Denmark, where we're seeing they have like the best schools in the world, and they have a lot of great early childhood activities for kids before they go to school at 7. So.
Yeah, so which means, Jim, you have raised a very important point. I read it in the chat box. Thank you for that. Which means that, to achieve what you have said needs adequate, appropriate, and solid teacher training.
Yes.
And I would like again to highlight the importance of professional development. Our world is undertaking so many changes at the economic level, at the political level, at the social level. Now with the social media now that is mushrooming everywhere. So we need to train our future teachers in terms as how to do it, to equip them with innovative methods, with active methods of teaching, with new methodology, the teaching that goes hand in hand with all the changes. So we are no longer in need of those traditional curriculum. Most of it now is coming from the hidden curriculum. So we need to make new offers in terms of education. We need that digital literacy and to work more and more. And the pandemic has been a marvelous opportunity. Adequate curriculum for the kids as well as for the parents and the NGOs. And also we need some kind of support services for the people with the special education. So that said, we need that close collaboration and coordination between all the stakeholders and all the parties in order to guarantee and to make sure that we are doing and working on inclusive education in a very appropriate way.
And I think that comes from relationships, you know,
Sure.
to get back to the social emotional. You can put a framework in place, you know, this one meets with this one, but it's all about relationships, I think. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
I really appreciate, I'm going to jump to the other room, but I just really want to highlight the power of working with families in educating the next generation of learners. And I think it's really exciting to hear that the parents are getting involved in additional ways. And I want to just stress that enough. Education is here because families wanted their children to have skills and to have knowledge and to have these opportunities. And so the power of collaboration. Thank you for letting me join you. Do you mind if I take a quick picture for social media? Can we all smile real quick?
Sure.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's funny, we teach a class at my college on communication.
So the academic, all right. So the academic part, we can think about it by, I realize back here now, in terms of the probably students, I realize now they're giving more support in terms of software, application, websites that they can go on and do things self-paced, or they'll have somebody who will give them feedback. So they're getting more support at their level and where they need to be at. You know, it's not like in a group setting, it's like a one-to-one. Yes.
And Dr. Osborne, also, it's one aspect, because as we mentioned earlier in the main forum, we would need more assessors, you know, to assist the increase in the children who have different exceptional needs. So I'm thinking, even as the burnout was mentioned by Jennifer, we can look at even teachers' assistants so that you can have more team teaching happening in the classrooms, because this burnout is also with the overpopulated classrooms that we had even before COVID.
Yes.
And because of COVID, it was kind of like a hidden blessing, because as they now are going back to school, there are less persons. So the teacher-student ratio is kind of coming down to what we really saw as ideal for children who had varying needs.
Yes. And as you mentioned before, Jennifer, I imagine you want to speak. I was reading today. Was reading today, stating that for the unattached students who were, you know, who missed out, the ones who missed out from the pandemic, they're going to the learning gap. They're going to start reading at my end.
Me too.
Yes, they're going to employ how many other additional teacher support. Some of them might not be teachers, might be retired teachers, might be counselors to help in that process. So that is it. More support, as you said, less on the class side. Oh, the initiative that I saw on the website was that they're going to have extra lesson. That's what they call it. You know, the good old extra lesson. Yeah. They're going to have extra lesson programs for these students. I think it works because, you know, some students don't want to spend longer at school. They like to spend less.
That's a walk in the right direction, a step closer.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I'm in your group right now. I was wondering if I could get a picture of all of us. So if you wouldn't mind smiling really quickly. Okay.
Should I stop sharing?
No,
I can stop.
Oh yeah,
sharing.
sure.
Okay.
Oh, watch Dr. Osborne.
Sorry, I
All
tried to
right,
turn my-
1, 2, 3.
Jennifer.
I tried to turn my camera on and it won't turn on. I'm on my iPad and I think it's not
It's all right.
working.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you. And it sounds like a wonderful conversation. I think it's funny, I just kind of randomly put people in groups, and of course I have all the Jamaicans in one.
That's what we said earlier. We're like, hold on, is this
All right, thank you. I'm going
All
to
right.
jump into the other room now.
All right, thank you.
About themselves. Hey, Rebecca. You
Hi,
had
everyone.
anything?
Do you mind if I take a quick picture for social media? Is that okay? All right, so let's all smile. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. How is the timing okay? Or, do you think about like 5 more minutes, or how are you doing?
We spent some time just doing introductions, so I would say at least 5 more minutes. I don't know.
Okay, not a problem at all. Yeah. So, okay, I'm gonna jump in. Oh, well, why don't I stay here for a minute and then I'm gonna check in on the other room. But
We're just diving into social emotional learning. So I guess going to our slide prompt. So what are some of the things that you're doing? And I think we could look at this since all of us are working with adults in some capacity. What are we doing for At Promise learners? Social emotional skills, both children and adults.
Do you have should we just jump in there or?
Just jump in.
Okay. And this was really great connection for this, project that we're doing, that I'm connected with you. So that'll be really, really good. So I go back to the social emotional learning of the adults, again, the teaching assistants that do not have the training to support, well, because we're going the All Promise learners, and those, to go back, those teaching assistants live and stay in the community. So if we give them the knowledge and the skills to support those kids, not only in school, but in the community setting, like, for instance, the communities are getting ready, they're gearing up to do fishing.
GOALBOOK.
Oh, goal book. Okay, definitely we'll look at it. I wonder if there's a Canadian version.
It's goalbookapp.com.
Okay.
And I would, it's not an inexpensive thing to do, but I think there's a lot of ineffective things that we spend our money on in education. And I found this to be an incredibly effective tool for all of our teachers. And so, so we made it happen. I mean, if you combine your Title I dollars with your special ed dollars, you can stretch it and make it happen for every teacher.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's almost time for us to go. I need a volunteer who will share out. I'm trying to put notes on the slide deck, but I'm unable to share. So I can do that right now, but in case I'm not able to finish, do we have volunteers who want to share out when we go to the larger room? So we got resources on the goal book. We talked about intensive work with students, and we also talked about getting the right people and using UDL as a framework.
I can write that into the slide. You said intensive.
Okay.
So there's a goal book, and then the intensive.
Yes. Intensive work with students, and then implementation of PBIS, and people to manage resources appropriately. We also talked about using UDL as a framework. Did I cover everything?
We talked about MTSS as well, which includes PBIS and RTI.
Thank you. Am I missing anything?
S-R-T-I. Oops. All right. So yeah, you're gonna have, I'm closing the rooms just now. So you'll have like, I think it's 2 minutes from the time. So if you just want to even, just finish up any conversation or come back, you're not going to be kicked out right away. I don't believe. Yeah,
Right.
2 minutes. Okay.
So thank you so much. Does anyone have a
Hello. What a great conversation, huh? Oh, you're on mute.
Recorded.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Alice, but you're on mute.
I'll tell you. No, it was great. The panel was wonderful, and I enjoyed our little session.
Yeah, it's always nice to be able to actually, in these big webinars and everything that we're always on, to actually be able to talk to people in a smaller venue. So, because I actually do have lots of lists of ones that are recorded that I always mean to go back to, and I haven't made the time yet. But
Rebecca, may I ask how much focus you give on decolonization in the US? Is there a huge movement towards
my
it?
university, it's huge. In fact, we're decolonizing the dissertation. So Mario, who's on this call, I don't know if you saw his chats in there, but he's my research assistant. And because Clara couldn't be here, I asked him if he could, use some of his hours to be here, take notes, and just, kind of help out. And so he was nice enough to join us. But his dissertation is on decolonizing the education system. And right now we're looking at how can we take the dissertation and create an opportunity to kind of move away. Okay, Mario, I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you share a little bit about your dissertation topic? Because I was just talking about you.
Oh, sure. My dissertation topic is deconstructing masculinity for Latino male educators to increase their critical gender consciousness. And my goal is how do we disrupt heteronormative standards in classrooms if we're trying to truly be inclusive? Because I think masculinity still feeds you have to be socialized into certain norms. And I also think men in general don't know how to navigate being in a highly feminized profession, of how to articulate their voices. There's been a lot of emotionality support that they need in general. And so my goal is to kind of enhance that and see how it leads to retention or more purpose in their teaching.
So just so you know, we were talking when the breakout groups, before we all came back, we were talking about how Laura was asking, do we talk about decolonization within the education system here in the US? And I said, yes, at least at my university. And then I mentioned that Mario is my research assistant and that I asked him to be here today to help out when Clara couldn't make it. But I also then said, well, actually, even his dissertation topic is right on point about this. So it is exciting work. I think that right now we're really moving into a new phase of education where we are truly calling out the inequities and the oppressive systems within the world. And so we have this opportunity to really move our language, our thinking, and the way that we collaborate to a whole nother level. And I think today, just with all of us who are in the room today and anyone who watches the recording, we're really going to be seeing evidence of that happening. So I am going to stop talking now. I'm going to share the screen, and I just want to, whoops, let me get the right screen on here. I want to just give every one of the groups an opportunity to share just a brief summary of what you talked about. Oh, sorry. A brief summary about what you talked about in your groups. And I'm just going to get the right slide on here. Now I'm going to share. But yeah, this is important work when we talk about inclusivity. You know, that oftentimes we've stuck to differing abilities, and now it's really like the definition is changing. I'm sorry that we've got it kind of moved over to the side a little bit, but would somebody from group 1 please share out some of the main points about what you spoke about? Just go ahead and unmute.
I can share. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So Lara shared a lot with us about coping strategies, and Samia also shared a lot of resources such as the Goalbook app and using UDL as a framework. She also talked about the use of the multi-tiered system, the use of positive behavior intervention supports, and having the right people to implement this. Our team also talked about some concerns about the critical shortage of teachers, which is actually allowing anybody to be able to teach. So group 1, if you can add to what I just said, yeah.
All right. Did anyone want to add, or?
I just put the Goalbook app info on the in the chat. It's goalbookapp.com. And it might be worth checking out. You know, it's a great resource on how to actually operationalize the UDL framework in the classroom for all content areas and all teachers.
Fantastic, thank you. Would group 2 like to share out a summary?
I can share.
Thank you.
We got into in the beginning to talking about social emotional. There's a really good pattern of how early intervention and early childhood support, for examples like Head Start, actually cooperate and coordinate with parent engagement, and how to utilize that to enhance social emotional skills, not just academics. Then we got into a really amazing discussion. So on the bottom, I put extra points of more parents are engaging in the educational outcomes for their kids, right? And so there's more organization and there's more awareness of what the government is doing in their words versus their actions, especially when it's like public school education. We talked about there's a need for professional development for educators in becoming pedagogical experts. There's a lot of research and theory and frameworks that never really make it to K-12 educators unless it's like district or school bound. And then we also mentioned like how we need proximity of educational programming for teacher prep to be in the schools, collaborating with current teachers and seeing what's happening on the ground, so that there is no division between higher ed and K-12.
Thank you. Yeah, I was in their room for a moment, and the conversation was just amazing. All right, so group 3, can somebody give a summary?
All right, I'll go ahead, but I would love for my team members to feel free to jump in terms of individual points that they wanted to elaborate on. We started with the need for more mentorship sessions, that collaboration between students and maybe counselors or mentors to really support students, assisting, and then that will then lead into building their academic performance and their ability to show up in the class. And that can also speak to Maslow's hierarchy of needs in terms of that sense of belonging, that care, and then impacting their ability to really do well in the classroom. A change in stereotypical views and discrimination. We mentioned about our own Jamaican context and the way in which we approach and assign labels to students with special needs, calling them as we see them. Instead of looking at the person for who they are as an individual, instead of relating to them or assigning their disability first, and the issue of using people first language to associate students with special needs. We mentioned the capacity building for counselors to support behavioral challenges. We have a problem when it comes to segmenting or segregating students and immediately assigning them as having a serious behavioral issues when there could be something really embedded, something deep-seated that could be going on with the child. We're often quick to assign that the child is rude or misbehaving without really determining the issues. Addressing the need of the issue of teacher burnout, looking at contexts where there are quite large numbers of students in one class. And I think Nicole mentioned her situation in, was it Tanzania? And the issue of having so many students in one class with one teachers. And we have not as an extreme case in Jamaica, but something similar where we do have large cohorts of students with one teacher. And so the issue of differentiating and providing that individual support can also be incredibly challenging. When we're looking at academic, more technological support for learners, increase assessors to assist students with individual needs, and Ms. Phillips-Bennett mentioned about the delay in assessment, which leads to delay in their learning needs being met. And so the issue of professionals and experts in particular areas to meet that demand is a serious problem. And I mentioned about within our deaf community, working towards addressing that learning gap from the pandemic. There had a serious issue before the pandemic in terms of attendance, and now pre-pandemic that gap has even widened significantly. And so one of the schools that are closely affiliated with, they are now sending other members of the community to go into the homes to work with the parents to get the students back in school, just to show you the extreme situation that we're now in. I hope I summarized that well. If you wanted to add, please go right ahead.
My goodness, we have got brilliant people on this call. Thank you so much. All right, so we've got our last group, group 4. Would somebody like to kind of summarize?
Hi, we have Pamela Skogstad who will share our group discussion.
Pamela, it looks like you're on mute.
There we go. Apology. I'm so glad. I couldn't remember Sasha's name. So Sasha, thank you. I wanted to follow up with our discussion on what you said at the end there, but we discussed empowering local staff, and I work out in rural Alaska, and just the discussion about empowering staff from the paraeducator to the locals so that they have the skills and the knowledge to maybe take this to a level of paraeducators getting a certification, but getting that training out in the villages where they live and taking the training. And we had just discussed, okay, so fishing is coming up. So with the indigenous populations out there, if they have the knowledge and the tools to help a student who is nonverbal or a student who has a physical disability, and they know how to, include those, include them into the community, that's an empowering piece. And so the project that we are doing is taking the training out to the communities, in rural Alaska. and giving them the certifications and the training there and doing regional trainings. And you don't just do it one time, you have to go back out and you have to have this continuous. So Sasha, what the last piece that Sasha was saying was talking about the decision makers, the lawmakers, the people who make the decisions that give us the money to do the projects that we're doing. So the plan with this project is to demonstrate effective outcomes to our state legislators. So through this year, we're going to implement this project and then go to the state legislators and our State Board of Education and go, we did this. This is how effective it was in the local communities. And this is how teacher retention with local Indigenous educators can be kept and within their own communities. So.
Thank you so much. So we are doing pretty well with time. This is the end of our event. We would love for you to join DICE. So we have the QR code there, or you can go to the website. We are a part of the Council for Exceptional Children. So you do have to be a member of the CEC, and then you can add DICE as one of your divisions. We are having our Global Leadership Summit, and I'm going to put in the chat right now the link to our registration for that. It's on June 27th and 28th. It'll be in Breckenridge, Colorado. We had to move it from Dubai to here in the States for various reasons, but we hope that you can join us for that. And then on October 15th, we're going to have the follow-up to this event. We're going to continue to look at this UNESCO report. And as I mentioned before, I had put that into the link. And then also we're going to focus, we decided to start with helping and supporting at promise students in academic and emotional wellness, because we knew that if we hadn't started with their well-being, that the learning outcomes did not necessarily matter. But the next one is really going to be around teaching and learning progress. So which is a major part of that report. So I will give an ask now that you share this with your community. I'm sure you noticed that we made this free for international guests. So if you have people from other places around the world that might be interested in being part of these conversations, when we send the call out, please reach out to your friends in different communities. It is free for them, and we did that very, very intentionally. And then the final thing is, we love your feedback. And so if you could, once again, this is a QR code. If you could fill out this survey, it will help us with guiding our preparation around creating these types of events and making it so that we are really coming up with better ways that we can serve our global community, and I'll put the link to that in the chat right now. But any ideas that you have, even for beyond, for maybe even marketing our event, we have Jim Chappell on here, who is one of the people that looks at our DICE's not enrollment, but membership. There we go. But we really do want to make this global impact, and so a big part of that is highlighting the voices from our community. If you have a good speaker, please put that in the survey. We just want to grow our community. And I just want to say thank you so incredibly much to our panelists. Thank you so much to our facilitators. And thank you all for coming and being part of the breakout groups, because the community is successful when people show up, and you all showed up here today. So thank you. Alice, did you want to say anything else as our leader?
Well, I only wanted to thank everybody again, and especially the panelists. You gave us so much to think about, and the discussions in the breakout rooms were just absolutely fabulous. And I just want to leave, we mentioned this in our breakout group, but leave with the thought of, today we talked a little bit about Alaska, South Africa, Jamaica, Morocco, Canada, and even the US. And so many of the issues we talked about, whether they're academic or social emotional support, it's universal. It's universal. And I think that's why in diocese, we love getting people together to talk about what's happening around our world in terms of supporting teachers and students and parents and all the others who help. But the issues are universal. And so there's something we can all contribute to these conversations. So thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, very much appreciated. And we are adding a new piece to this. Yeah, please be on the lookout. We're starting from last year is when we started these events last February. So this is our 5th one. And we are now working on creating briefs to summarize and share the resources again on the website. So keep your eye out for when we get our first one from last February published, and then they'll be coming out in order so that we can really share, once again, the amazing work that's been done here at Diocese and within communities. So thank you.
Rebecca, can we just mention the sip and chats?
Oh, absolutely. You're the sip and chat person, so go for it.
Okay. Well, the Diocese Membership Committee last year sponsored 3 sip and chats, and we're going to be doing just an opportunity for you to get together, bring whatever your favorite beverage is, and we get together for an hour and just have conversations about international topics and get to meet new people. Our first one will be May 7th, and I don't remember the exact time. I think it's at 9 o'clock in the morning, but I will check on that, and just follow the Diocese website to make sure that you're able to attend. So I'd love to have you join us.
So that would be 6 a.m. because I believe you're in the East Coast for. But no,
oh, you Californians, you will still be up.
All right. Well, have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.